Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Today I'll be reviewing my second round game from the Ann Arbor Autumn Open 2025, which I played at the time of this recording a few days ago. If you did not see the first video on my first round review, I did end up winning that round against my father. He put up a good fight, but this tournament is all Dons are in the same divisions, the Don division, and all the games are even. So even though my dad put up a good fight, it was quite a mountain for him to overcome, and he did his best, but I did end up winning. And so I'm 1-0 in the tournament, and so my second round opponent is Hal Rosenblit, 2 Don. Hal's a very nice older gentleman, and he pretty much brought the fight as well. And it was a very exciting game, so let's take a look at it. The time settings for this, as a reminder, were 30 minutes Fisher time with I think it was 5 seconds back every moves. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the game. I am black in this game, and whenever I see this, it's right here. I was like, okay, my opening when white does something in the corner, I'm going to play here. I like this opening. I believe even in my next round, where I also get black, this is the opening I play. But this is the opening I like playing as black. But when white plays here, you got to get the approach to 3-4s when you have your own 3-4 facing it. Because if I'm able to get this kind of variation, like this, then I'm able to play some variation of a move, whether I do just play in the corner, or sometimes I like to play a move that prioritizes the bottom side and the corner, maybe something like N4 or O4. That's why you really want to get your approach if possible, because you can kind of connect your lower right with the lower left. But then white plays here. And not that this move is necessarily bad, but it's definitely a move that has fallen out of style. And whenever I see a player who plays this, first off, it always goes into it. The thought enters my mind of, okay, do they know their AI variations, right? Because AIs don't play this. So in my head, I'm like, okay, Hal's an older gentleman. He's probably been playing longer than I've been alive, or close to that. So even in my head, I'm like, I concede Joseki knowledge with the Josekis like this. So I'm always prepared. So before I get into what I did, for example, this is the pre-AI kind of way to play. And then you get a lot of complications with these kind of moves, with these ones. And even when this was popular, I was not a fan of this Joseki. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And it was a little complicated. Like, I think here you cut next, maybe. I'm not an expert on this, and I'm the first to admit it. And so whenever, especially in tournaments, you don't want to play moves that, one, you don't know, but secondly, your opponent might know better. So when white plays this, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, white knows this Joseki better than me. So I'm going to take a slightly worse result to play moves that I understand. And so this goes back to my overarching point of, if your opponent plays a pincer or a Joseki you do not know, don't just fall into their trap. Play a variation that does not have a lot of complications, variations, and go from there. So in the game, I go here, which again is not the best move, but it simplifies the board for me, so I don't let white take an advantage by doing an opening or a Joseki that they know better than me. So in the game, we get this, and then white plays here. It's the same thing I do whenever I approach low and my opponent pincers, right? Something like this. I know, okay, if I go here, then white's going to push and cut, right? And then now we have a Joseki where if my opponent knows it better than me, I'm going to be at a severe disadvantage. So this would be a case where either I just leave it, or I would just play something like the one-space jump. Do something that I understand. So especially in tournament, if your opponent does a move that you don't feel confident in, then don't just blindly go down that route. So this is one of the ways. So if your opponent ever does this, this is a nice way to simplify the position. Again, after this, what other moves are there for white to play? Just really the Hane, right? And then after this, no matter what white does, if white goes elsewhere, you just play b2. So white prevents that, and then you just make a base. You're going to avoid any sort of complications, especially when this kind of move here is trying to attack, right? A pincer is an attacking move. Now, another way you can play, which is a way you could have played where if you approach low like I was showing, is just go elsewhere as well. As long as it's just one stone, you can always leave it. So you could also just do something else entirely. But yeah. So yeah, like again, here, what are the different moves white can play? White can go elsewhere, but then I just answer locally. So white goes down and I come up. And yeah, again, I'm settling and I'm making a base. So I would try to find these in a lot of the variations you're not comfortable with, or at least just variations that have a lot of variables involved. I would just try to find simple ways to avoid them so that, again, you don't get into positions where the entire game is decided because you didn't know a 50 move Joseki. So yeah, so here though, white should definitely just play a move like h5. It prevents the Hane at the head of 2 stones and continues to attack black. But here the move for black is to play c6. Now the idea with c6 is if white splits, then I jump out. And now white has 2 problems. If you block here, then I get your perfect extension on the bottom side. Right now these 3 stones are weaker than the black stones. But if you play here, then I can simply just block. Yeah, so lots of problems for white. If white does something else though, then maybe I won't have to even play that jump. So it's a good asking move. How are you going to play white? But it's still better than allowing black to get this Hane and potentially even the double Hane. I did not double Hane, but this was definitely an option. Because even if you just extend, there's still a weakness here. And if you try to fix in Sente, right, something like this, there's still weaknesses, and now black is super strong. So yeah, in the game, I simply just play the weakness. Because this is the move I'm basically going to play regardless, because it's just a shape point in white's shape. And again, if white comes through, or tries to break through, then I can just keep attacking. Because now I have an extra stone at h5 if white's not careful enough. For example, if white continues coming out, then I can play moves like g6, which g6 is now activating the cut here, but now also threatening to surround. So the idea is I'm forcing white. This move is always Sente, basically, right? So let's say if this move is always Sente, I'm basically forcing white to go down this path, even though white might not want to. So I'm doing this first, because also depending on how white plays, like maybe white just crawls here, which white does. Well, now maybe I can double Hane now instead. Or maybe I'll do something else. Maybe I can cut. So always play your probes first. Play the moves first that your opponent has many ways to answer first to see how they're going to play. White knows that though, so white just crawls. So if you are just going to crawl, there is a better move for you to play here, and it's to play this one. And this is pretty unintuitive actually, because you don't want to play moves that force your opponent to cut your shape, but in this case it's okay because we're on the 2nd and 3rd line. So like when black descends, you might think, oh, well, black's just cutting through my knight's move. But actually, when we descend again, black cannot separate, because if you separate, you get captured first, because you only have 2 liberties. So normally black will just Hane, and we descend, and then black extends, and then we can extend here. So this is the better way for white to play, comparing that to simply just crawling and letting me jump here. Much better result. So yeah, I'll try to keep in mind this move. Yeah. So I jump, white pokes it, and then I jump again. Again, I've talked about this a lot in my videos, but it is good to remind players. As opposed to just connecting, which does just one thing, you want to try to be efficient. So always imagine your opponent has made the weakness, and then ask yourself, how are you going to fix if they go elsewhere? Maybe you would go here. 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 And then based on that, fix it now. So then I would consider moves like this, d8, maybe this one, but I decided on this one because it does make a nice big bend here and is the closest connection to h5. So that's how I found e8. And here, though, white is 100% alive in the corner. So white should just go elsewhere. Again, there's a lot of options. Approaching to the upper right, fixing the upper left, approaching the right, lower right. Even getting this extension up is very big, preventing the double hane. That's a good move. But white just goes here. So I don't know if white thought they were not alive or just thought it was a big move. But when we're talking about second line moves here, the corner's not that big. So for example, if white does go here, the thing is with black hanes here, white can simply just hane back. Black has to answer, and now is the question, can white live? And white can. White can simply just push and cut. If black just Ataris, and white has an eye there, even if black squeezes like this, and white takes, white can live if white needs to at any time. So even if white crawls, white's already alive. So white's 100% alive there. And while it might look painful to live this way, it's not like white doesn't get that many more points when white plays b2. So I approach there. White plays here, and now here's a very important question. What side is more valuable, the left side or the top for black? What do you think? Take a second to think. The top side is more valuable, which might be counterintuitive because you have more stones facing the left, but there's a very key element on the left side that needs to be pointed out. b7. b7 right here. The fact that there is an open skirt here means that the left side is pretty small. And even just size-wise, the top side is bigger. There's more point value for black up top. But so for example, let's say even white kicked, for simplicity's sake, like this. Well now, okay, if I surround the left side, where white can just push here. And if I can't block, which I really can't, you can just see how weak my shape is here, and I have to just extend. Every time, even though white's just gaining a point each time, it's making my left side smaller and smaller. Even if I block now and I can't, and white can't necessarily cut, white can at least clamp. So you can just see the left side is just tiny, 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 tiny. But if I play something here, well then white can just attack me, my 2 stones on the top. So this is actually a case where white should probably kick because I don't want the left side, but it makes my 2 stones here heavier. When white simply goes here, I actually switch directions like this. And now if white kicks, again, the left side's not valuable, I'll just jump here. So yeah, I don't want to stand up because after kick and white jumps, again, I owe a move on the left and I owe a move up top. But white doesn't even kick, white plays here. And in general, if you have a third line stone and your opponent plays a move against it on the second line, you should try to ignore it. Now in this case specifically, because the left side is so small, I did ignore it. But in general, you want to ignore it. Because compare it to the kick, what is the follow-up for white if you go elsewhere? Well, your follow-up is making a tiger's mouth like this. And notice each of these moves is taking away liberty. So that stone at c15 here is very weak. Or whether white maybe hane is underneath, right? You're taking away a liberty. When you play here, not only are you playing on the second line, which is not worth that much, you're not even taking away a liberty. So that's why it's okay to ignore, which I do. And white even pincers, which again is not horrible, but each move white adds is just it's going after a smaller piece of the pie. Because again, it's when the left side is not valuable for black, conversely that means the left side is not valuable for white. So white doesn't really want the left side either. So yeah, I just go elsewhere and I play a big move, right? Q13. It may have gotten into my head a little bit, but I remember I call it my best tournament game. Because one, overall, I played well in that game. But secondly, when I look through it with AI, there's a move I played that the AI didn't see. And it's always fun seeing the graph say I'm losing. And then once I play the move, it slowly is like, oh wait, you're actually winning by a lot because you killed this 30 stone group, that kind of thing. But in that game, I played the 2-space, I guess, high enclosure here from the 4-4. And my student who loves that game, because he's my #1 fan, calls this the Soren opening, or the Soren enclosure. So I think that partially influenced me here, but I just really wanted to build on a large scale. So yeah. So then white peeps here, which isn't a horrible move, but always keep in mind, you want to save these Sente moves for when you know you want it. Because when white peeps here and then goes here, which way do you think I go? If you had to guess, I go for the top as opposed to the corner. Because if I go for the corner, white will be able to use the stone at J16. But by going here, the question is now, how did the J16 exchange help white? Well, it didn't really. But if white didn't even do that, like this, and just goes here, don't I always have to answer J16 if white ever ends up playing it? Yes, it's always a Sente move. But white loses some endgame when now, let's say I go elsewhere. Later, white might want to play G17, right? This is a big endgame move. This solidifies the corner. In Sente, reduces the top. But after you've made this exchange, you can't really do that in Sente now, right? You've forced black to connect, so that one stone is a lot stronger. So because this move is Sente all the time, I would not exchange it until I know I want to. Because yeah, now, again, in the game, that stone there is just... You'd rather not have that exchange on the board than have it. So, yeah. But white lives in the corner, and so I play on the bottom. Go at the shape point. Whenever you have 2 stones here, you really want to play kind of one space away. The idea with this is you're threatening to connect under. If white even makes a tiger's mouth, you can connect under. That's the whole idea with this move. So white Ataris, which again is more of a thank you move than hurting me, because you still have 2 weaknesses, but then white goes down, which again, I can just descend. White connects, and then I descend again. So now here comes an important topic called Miai, which I'm sure all of you have heard of Miai, but it's not as simple as how the definition might make it sound. So the definition is 2 interchangeable points where if your opponent takes one, you take the other, and vice versa, right? But what does interchangeable mean? Well, interchangeable, like in terms of here, like let's say we have an empty board. Even here, I think works, right? Yeah, something like this, right? White has Miai to make a base either way, right? So it depends on the context what interchangeable means, right? So black extends one way, you can extend the other way, right? Interchangeable. But that's not always true, or at least the context changes. So for example, right here, black has Miai to connect, right? Black is threatening to connect under here, but also connect towards the bottom right. So you might think that's Miai. And again, technically it is Miai, by definition it's Miai, because there's 2 interchangeable points that accomplishes the goal that black wants. But in this case, they are not quite interchangeable. And the reason why they're not interchangeable is they're not worth the same. So for example, when white connects here and I extend, did white gain anything with J3? No. Right? And that's very easy to see. Right? You didn't surround anything with this. But imagine it instead if white was able to maybe play here. Again, this would force black to have to connect. And now we could see, did white gain more with the stone at N3 or J3? And it's very obvious here to tell that yes, a move at N3 is more valuable. And what this even means is because this is interchangeable, you can leave it for now. What if now instead white maybe plays this attachment here? Well, now in this kind of position, you're getting rid of N3 as an option for black to connect back. So now black is forced to ignore, but then you get a response in the corner. Same thing if black hanes, right? Black hanes and we extend, there's a cut here, but if black connects, now when we connect, we've gotten rid of that option. So this is, again, by definition, Miai, but in practice, it's not actually Miai because they're two interchangeable points in terms of black connecting, but they're not two interchangeable points in terms of relevance and what they are accomplishing. So this is a case where white should not just separate me because I just connect. Instead, white should look to do something else. Again, I think attach is a good move. This is, again, it's better than J3, but it is a little one-dimensional because you probably need to connect back still, and then black gets to answer anyways, but it's still better than J3. So yeah, Miai is not always what it seems, I guess. So then black goes back, and then white approaches. So only question I needed to ask myself here was, is white alive on the bottom? Yes or no? And depending on that, I will either keep white separated or just take the corner. If white was alive on the bottom, yeah, I would just take the corner for sure and be happy. But since white's not alive on the bottom, okay, I'll keep you separated. Not much thought needed with N4. But white says, okay, you ignored, so I play here. And again, since I'm so solid here, normally you don't really want to play this move, but I extended here. You don't want to play this move generally because it leaves bad Aji with clamp or even peep. But when I'm so solid here, it's okay to play this. But then white extends. So now the rest of the game, or the important part of the game, is what happens to this bottom side group. Because white is actually scooping up a lot of points. Because I have some points on the bottom right here, but the top is still open, and this side here is not worth that much, whereas white is getting cash everywhere. So, but white's the only one with the weak group. So I cut, white jumps, I jump, and now is a very important question of how does white handle this cut here? How does white handle this cut? So, in the game, white just Ataris here, but the problem with this move is you're just Ataring from behind, which in general is not a great strategy, right? Every time black is ahead and you're pushing from behind, that is just a no-no if you can avoid it. So what are some other ways white can play? Well, white can jump here. Notice this is threatening to capture. When black plays the same move as I did in the game, notice white is now on the same level. So white could play even just a jump or even a diagonal here. Now white is not forcing black to surround points on the left here. But another way white could even play is here. What is the point of this move? Well, again, when white Ataris here, white is giving up any option to Atari the other way. But if you're able to play here, and I stand up, you can actually just capture this stone here. M6 is netting these two stones. So that means I have to stand up. Then white gets to Hane, I extend, and white fixes. Maybe fixes like this. Yeah, white's shape here is a lot better. So white had a lot better ways to handle this cut here as opposed to Ataring from behind. So if you're about to do something like that you know is not so great, you should try to stop yourself and find a better move. Which here there's a lot of better moves. Yeah, even just jump or again kicking here is a good move too. White Ataris, because when white jumps here I turn, white Hanes and I turn, and then when I play this knight's move, all of a sudden my top stones connect to my lower left stones, and there's a huge potential there. And white says, nah, that's a little too big. I have to come in. But now, this is again a tricky point of the game. How do we handle this move? Because we can't really surround it. If we push this way, white can connect back to the right side or upper right or the lower right. If we go this way, white's connecting back there. We can't really net because there's weaknesses when we here. So how do we handle this? Do we just back off like this? And I think backing off is possible. It is possible. The problem with backing off, one, is mentally it feels bad, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to submit. I'm not going to let you get in. But secondly, white doesn't have to play as simply as just like jumping here. There's a lot of ways for white to play. Maybe white can now activate this stone potentially and view this as a potential backdoor to connect. So for example, what if white can go here? If we have to play here, then all of a sudden white can make a base up top. So yeah, it's not so simple. So once white goes here, I got to be willing to give up the top, which might sound crazy, but as long as I'm threatening something more than what white's threatening, it's okay to go elsewhere. So in the game, I split here. And the reason why I can split here is because white made a group here. If white had just done something else, like, I don't know, just like, I don't know, what's a go-to move, like jump here, I would not have played this because I don't really get anything for trying to split this. So yeah, but now that white has another thing to care about, white has to be careful. So for example, if white goes here, I can push here. And now, since white's indebted into this O12 stone, now it becomes a good exchange for me. So before I decide how I'm going to handle this stone, I'm seeing how I'm going to handle, or how white's going to handle this side. So white just attaches. So while I think it's okay for white to ignore my move here, I would not play this move. Because you're making, the right side's not worth a lot, and you're making the top side smaller. I would keep coming in. I would keep putting pressure on. Because let's say black pulls back like this, right? Well, now what if we jump in next, or maybe jump in like this? I do need to worry about the right side, or the upper right. So maybe even white turns like this, right? White can threaten to come in more, but when you just back off like this, it feels kind of away from what the whole point of O12 was, hey, black, I'm trying to come in. Okay, I'm going to let you keep coming in. And white says, nah, okay, I'm going to back off. So yeah, this lets me just jump back, but now white's a move behind. And again, the right side's weak and the lower side is weak. So white attaches, I poke, and I bump. Again, white has a lot of problems here. Hane, and white even doubles Hanes. And again, if you just think simply like Atari here, Atari like this, you got to handle this side now. You got to handle this side. Like even if I bump here and like take, like white can wedge here and just capture those stones. Yeah, that's what white wants. So don't think, there's a lot of ways to handle this. So don't just bite at the first thing that might come to your mind. Try to find something better. Because I can Hane here. When I Hane here, I can cut. And here I actually made a mistake. Or I almost made a mistake. Because in my head I was like, oh, I can do the squeeze like this. Right? And the squeeze would be amazing for black. But as I read a little more, I was like, oh, wait, white can connect. Now, strangely, I think this move can still work because when I connect, when white pushes here, yes, if I block, this would be catastrophic, right? But I don't need to block there. I can like push here. And these stones here are very weak. Like white's not any less weak in the center. So this is technically possible, but this is very vulgar. And if you know anything about my style, I try to avoid vulgar if possible. So instead, I just have a nice way of playing of just standing up here, threatening to capture the 2. So white fixes, and then I fix again. Yes, it is crazy. Even though my shape looks amazing here, there is still a weakness. So you might think I need to fix in the center, but this poke threatens to capture the 2. Like if I block, these 2 get captured. Whether I fix here or here will not matter. Like if I fix here, when white pushes, I can't block. So if I go here, I still can't block. Because if I block, this cut works for white. Because even though it looks like I can cut, this becomes an Atari. Like so. And it doesn't help if I go here either. Because even if I go here, while I prevented this by being a double Atari, white can Atari first here. And again, these are the important stones, so I can't really give them up. So what that means is regardless of which one I play, this is going to be some sort of Seki shape. Even if black pokes here, like this move is sente against the 3, and that's going to be some sort of Seki. I think white goes there, maybe. Yeah. I think Rabbit E6 is the biggest dead shape, and that's going to be more than a Rabbit E6. There's 2 extra spaces. So, yeah. White can make Seki. So I fixed. But white can push through, but thankfully, I can jump here. And the reason I can jump here is if white pushes, I can capture the 2. And even though it might look like I'm low on liberties, I actually have enough liberties because I have these 2 extra liberties here. So, yeah. After this, though, as you notice, like white is now dead on the bottom locally. So I even descend because I can play K1 and connect either way. So that's pretty cool. White descends, but I can poke and then connect. White goes here, I connect. And then when white cuts, very important here to slow down. because this might look like the obvious move, because with white connects, that's a dead shape. But white could make a ko, like so. But instead, you can simply just go there. So it's got to be careful and slow down. But then, yeah, after this, white jumps because you can't cut, but I can poke and jump. And then when white jumps out, I play L16. And then at this point, you can see, if you look at white's group, all my stones surrounding it are settled. And yeah, white's just kind of dead there. So yeah, we kind of, white like jumps back and forth between threatening things and not. Because again, white does need to make something happen because the bottom side is so big. But yeah, so I Hane. Very important here. I'd like to connect because I can capture 3 stones, but there is bad Aji when white pushes through like this, right? I still need to worry about this. Now I need to worry about this. So I simply just descend to keep the 3 stones connected. And the dive here is big. White plays there, cuts. I have a very nice way to fix here, where I can play at P14. And then white plays there. Yeah, that's probably the last biggest move. I can play here and then descend. White blocks. Probably better to play S18. As you'll see, compared to the game, the shape's a lot better for white. When white goes here, I can push and then Hane. This is a good order of moves. Where white can't block because I can Atari and descend. So white has to play here, but then I can jump. And by jumping, yeah, white has a dilemma because at any point I can throw in and make a ko. So white's now not alive. Even after this, I can still throw in to make a ko. But so white plays there, and then I peep. And this was a very strange moment in the game where I'm not even sure white looked at where I played. White almost immediately played B8 to my peep. Because when I connected then, they were like, oh my goodness, like they missed it. So it was a very strange moment to almost like not pay attention. Again, I'm not sure, but yeah, I connected here and they're like, oh my goodness, like they didn't see it, but they spent like half a second to play B8. I wonder if they thought I did something else, like something, I don't know, like here or something. I don't know, but definitely played too fast there. And so when I connected here, they pushed and connected, but even this was not a good exchange because 1, nothing works, but 2, it forces me to play S14, which threatens to kill the right side, upper right. So when they fix, again, still not fully alive, but even worse, when I play S4, the bottom right dies, and that's what happens. Yeah, they Atari, play some more Ataris, but it's going to be a dead shape after that. So yeah, the end result looks like it was, you know, quite disastrous for white, but really the last like half of the game was white had to make something happen to come back. So yeah, white had to ignore and take big spots on the left. So but yeah, it really came down to white really making a lot of groups on this board as opposed to really building a lot. They kept invading the upper right, approached the right side, the lower right when they had the weak group on the bottom, and then when they had their weak group on the bottom, they still played on my sector line in the upper right. So they were really juggling a lot, and black just really needed to divide and conquer and keep things simple. And eventually it was going to collapse for white. But again, 6 down versus 2 down, I think white played very well, and they did what they could, and it was an exciting game. But yeah, that was my second round game. I'm now 2-1. I forgot to mention it in the first video, I think, but I am leaving game records in the description of the video. So if you want to check out the game, go through it yourself, feel free. But yeah, if you have any questions about this game, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you all in the next video.